It's recording.
What? Hello and welcome to another episode of the Edufuturists podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Edufuturists podcast. Benny's laughing at me because we started recording 10 minutes ago and then I realised that I was still just chatting away. So,
Mate, I'm leaving all this in. I'm leaving it all in.
Do it, absolutely. Please leave in the fact that we were on a call for 10 minutes and you didn't even realise I just had to stare at your wonderful face, Ben, and the sunshine behind you. But it's been one of those days, hasn't it, mate, I think? But this is review 14. So thanks for tuning in and listening. I was joking. I don't know if it's on the shot that Ben will leave in or it isn't, but I was like, well, only 14. It feels like a million things. It feels like we've done more than 400, 500, 600 recordings as a whole thing, but actually the reviews feels like we've done a lot more. That is for sure. So yeah, we're going to go through, we're going to chew the fat, and we are going to do a review of the many. Each time we get to this, we go, are we going to have enough to discuss? There is 5, 6, 7, potentially more since our last review. And it's been a good one. It's been a good stint. And as always, patterns and themes do emerge, don't they, from clusters and the collective, Ben.
Yeah, and definitely. In fact, across them all, AI has obviously come up quite a lot, no surprise. And then the literacy and critical thinking around that come up a lot as a theme in that space. I also think the humanity and the caring nature of educators is definitely been important, especially in a good chunk of these. So I think the first one that we reviewed since last time is one with our long-time listener and subscriber to the podcast, good friend. She's joining us in the Uprising in June as well, nominated in that space, is the wonderful Nici Foote. And Nici is like I said, is a good friend of the podcast, but she talked about why learning needs to be messy, and we talked about messy learning. And I really like that as a concept because we try and put everything into boxes, into schemes of learning and lesson plans and formats and objectives, and there's nothing wrong with any of that, but sometimes it just needs to be a bit less linear, a bit more messy, a bit more squiggly, as the team from Squiggly Careers would say, a little bit more squiggly, don't it?
Best part, and clicked it off, so on and on for a bit. Yeah, I think it's one of those things that nothing really happens in a straight line, whether that's innovation, whether that's learning, whether that's just life, ultimately. But we try to put, I think it's education, and one of the things in education, we try to make education without trying and make it very different to what the world is. And we're saying to learning, it starts here, and it starts with the date, writing the date and the objectives in primary school. I don't know why they still do that, but Ella mentioned it the other day. She's like, I know the date. And I said, well, how do you know the date? She said, I had to write it off the board. I was like, you write off the board the date into your little book? And she's like, yeah. So like, it's that. And like learning only starts when an objective is discussed, and then a lesson ends and they get told when they're, and ultimately, like me starting this podcast, life is messy. My hair is messy. Life is messy. And ultimately, by trying to control overstructure, we prevent some of the things that happen from learning and everything else and innovation, and just, because what's to say that a learner wouldn't have 5 minutes after that bell had gone, I get it. We've just ended at a point where they're not ready to.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to that messiness, it's the idea that, and obviously Nicci's very passionate in that space around barriers to learning and the other bits that go with that. So for many people who have got like neurodiversities or challenges in that space, there is a real sense of, I don't know, like it makes it even more messy. And therefore it doesn't need to be straight line, it doesn't need to be linear, it doesn't need to be exactly the same following into the box. And I think what Nici brings into that mix around her work at Unbury and me, this big thing around universal design for learning, which has come up a lot in our conversations, a lot in presentations, and we know that our friend Paddy from Everywhere talks about that idea that necessary for some, useful for all concept. And I think that comes up in the conversation. So yeah, a good conversation, a good thought process. And actually tied to that, one of the conversations that we had after that was the next episode that we're going to review, which is with Rita Bateson from Ablana Learning from Dublin, who's going to be joining us in April at the Edufuturists Roadshow in Belfast, crossing over from Dublin into Belfast, and she's going to be part of that community there. But what we really, I don't know, Steve, what did you take from that conversation with Rita? Because I think the AI conversation and about literacy and about being not just about can you prompt a tool, can you use ChatGPT? I think that's where that navigation started to develop, wasn't it?
I think what links in, I suppose it's to the messiness and I remember we had a conversation around planes in airports, and I remember ultimately the destination of education currently for many, and seems like we're driving towards a destination of exam or test or milestone in terms of that metric. And when we're trying to put AI into education, that ultimately the challenge is that we're not really developing the understanding and the why of it and how it can really transform, and rather than just substitute some of the stuff that we're doing, the ability for AI to just create a lesson plan when rather than a person doing a lesson plan. I'm like, ultimately, that's not developing a skill set. That's just a real small element of it. But it seems often that many rappers and many AI tools are trying to replace and replicate and only substitute what AI can do rather than the human. And ultimately, I just think, why don't we just, but which is fine, but then does that come alongside the ability to really think about what do we then spend our time doing if AI does replace it? If
Yeah,
we are no longer doing that, what does that space actually mean when AI takes off all the stuff that it can do better?
yeah,
Can we spend more time being better humans and better people with our young people and each other rather than
yeah.
just sitting and transactionally working?
I think that human centeredness that comes out in that has come out in every podcast that we've done for the last 10 years probably, about how what takes a human, that human first stuff that's come out in all the ones that we'll review this in this section. Human first, professional second, that we obviously came from Jazz at our event. But that human centered design in that age of AI literacy. So what does it mean to, what does a human do in that space, and then what does an AI machine do in that for a teacher and for a student? I also think from a broad conversation about how we train that and how we develop that. What Rita and the team are doing there is trying to help us navigate that broader conversation about training for AI being more than here is a framework to get really good stuff out of AI. And that for me navigates really nicely into a brilliant conversation that we had with Dr. Iain MacRitchie. And obviously Ian's story is mad in the fact that he's been super successful in business, decided then to make a transition into that charitable third sector, and has been building tech products off the back of it, but still very much talked about the human approaches and another thought about the need for mentors and good humans in the space.
What's really interesting, what I loved, and hopefully listeners, if you haven't, go listen to it. But ultimately, what the theme out of, and the thing that we build strength on as an Edufuturist podcast is, there is no product sell. And ultimately, Ian has a great mechanism. He has AI products, but we spent so little even talking about what his product was, because the product is hopefully going to be able to do. And I think it's two linear paths the way I'm seeing it. How do we develop our skill set to make sure that we know how to use AI, our literacy, and how we can utilize it better? But at the same point, have we really spent enough time in terms of that human intelligence bit with our learners and all of our colleagues and each other? Do we really know what human intelligence is and how we develop that stronger? And do we spend time with that? If you think about compassion and curiosity and all of those things that has been softer skills for such a long period of time, have we spent enough time there in terms of our teacher training and our time developing educators and leaders on that space? And how do we develop each other and continue to push those? Because ultimately, in the age of AI, that will be the thing that makes humans stand out.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't agree. Couldn't agree anymore in terms of like what makes us stand out, what makes us the kind of people that still need each other, because in a disconnected world, a very very disconnected world, where our only connection sometimes is through the silicon on these things, on these mobile phones and AI note takers and all the other bits that go with it. How on earth do we show the human value? Interestingly, that there are some things that I think are intangible for many of us to grasp and to explain. That there's just something that, yeah, I can have all these friends on social media. Yes, I can watch this and I can use that AI note taker and I can work in those large language models for generative AI. But there's something that happens when you're in a group with a room of people. I was at a conference this week, the week they were recording, and I was with a group of people, nearly 400 people in a physical space in London. Yes, we talked a lot about AI. Yes, there was a lot of like digital elements that were happening in space, but the really powerful thing was just a hug, and it's good to see you, and somebody checking in, and somebody, I got a blister on back of my foot and somebody just came, and two people came with plasters at exactly the same time. Just that human nature and the human connection that, interestingly, as we've navigated loads of times, Steve, haven't we, about the future of education, we think that obviously the bricks and mortar school will be one part of a big picture of education, and there'll be a lot of disparate opportunities for parents to take some ownership and agency of that. But we still need that human touch, that human that an AI will never ever replace. And I think even Iain, when he's talking about building Key 2 with his AI app, and Rita with that Ablana stuff, that neither of those people are trying to say that'll replace it. We're just saying that'll enhance it. And like you said, and I'm going to come back to what you said there about the time that it creates. What do we do with that, and how do we make more time for human connection with the time that AI creates for us?
Imagine if we created more space for learners and more space for educators and more space for everybody in education, all stakeholders, and then just filled it with something else that is transactional and is pointless and is not needed. I think we have done a wonderful job, if that has ever been the ambition, to fill and make education such a busy, full space with no space for exploration and conversation. Will AI now allow us for better conversations, more interconnectivity, and more interpersonal and intrapersonal relationships with each other, regardless of age? And I think that will really put the purpose back into education.
I agree. I agree. And I know we're jumping one, so I'm not gonna. In fact, no, I'm not gonna jump one, because episode 335 was the BETT episode. Now, I'm gonna call out, if you've listened to that and watched that, the quality of it wasn't where we wanted it to be, but the conversations were important. The conversations were really, really important, in terms of most of the people that were in there that were being interviewed have got AI in their tech stack. They are talking about how AI is being utilized for resources, streamlining, for blah, 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 analytics, all sorts of stuff. But the theme that came about out of all of it was the importance of meaningful use of AI, as opposed to just any old use of AI. So that episode, and we interviewed loads of people, didn't we, at BETT? In fact, that's a really long episode, 2 hours and 42 minutes long. We just put it all together in one. So if you've listened to it all, then well done. But we had some great conversations.
Brilliant. And if you want to call out the fact that Ben hasn't spent enough time editing that episode, then please do, because I think 2 hours and 42 minutes is, because he's not already angry about it enough, but Ben has spent an awful amount of time. So, Ben, give yourself some credit there for you and the team that's worked on it to edit and review to get it where it is. 242 minutes. But how much content was beyond that didn't feature and couldn't feature? I loved it. I think we intersected with some real massive people in tech. We were lucky because we were like, how do we get more people, and how do we not beat, but how do we enhance on what we did last year at BETT? And I think we got to have conversations with some people that we've already had on, John Neal, who's now at Kahoo, and some great stuff there. We went back and had conversations with Andrew Smolinski, a great thing on the digital brick stuff. But ultimately, we also then had some great stuff around Amazon and ideas, and from UCL, we had some absolutely wonderful conversations with so many different people. But the thing that takes me from BETT that really jumps out of that episode is the diversity amount of people that we spoke to, the amount of different people around the themes. And it is an intensive few days, isn't it, Ben? But ultimately, I think it's just a really, really nice experience for us. And we're really lucky that we, as a two, there's just me and Ben just doing this. Me and Ben. Yes, there's some teams that come in as contractors and support some of the editing and some of the other bits. But generally, it's just me and Ben that are just doing this. And we're now partnering with BETT, the biggest trade show for EdTech in the world, and having conversations with some of these senior leaders from Lego and Amazon and Google and all this other stuff. And I'm really proud of that. I stand by the fact that, Joe, how on earth did we get here, Ben? I don't know. And people go, we don't know either, and that's fine. But I'd love to hear what other people think about those conversations, because there's so many of us. It feels like BETT is a noise for us, isn't it? I can't remember every single one of those conversations because it's not a weekly recording. It is such an intensive 2 or 3 days, and then we have the wars on top of that as well, don't we?
Yeah, and it's full on, but the conversations with old friends and new. It was great to chat with John from Orc and James from Arbor. They knew some new conversations in
Yeah.
that space.
And Salamander as well.
Salamander, Gavin, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, some real and sorry, Matt, I'm jumping in, but like people that actually knew us are into and have now become partners and have got
And Mark
great
and Blackout,
relationships.
yeah, Simon
Yeah,
from
brilliant.
Pobble, like really
Oh,
good
yeah.
conversation. But also what it also navigated for us was just that ability to ask what really matters, like what you're trying to work on, but more importantly, how does this move the needle of future education? So yeah, I agree. It's quite a pinch me moment often when you walk into BETT and you get to go into them spaces, isn't it?
And it's not it's not featured in the episode, but one of the standout moments for Beth is we're no longer on the DFE blacklist, Ben, and we were interviewed, and that will come out. We're excited to share that at some point, Joe, with Christian Turton and Trudy and the team there in regards to children and the DFE and the AI resources. Joe, to be invited and to be asked and to be involved in those conversations just feels really nice on it. Just really warm. It makes my heart
Yeah.
sing that me and you are been able to been invited into those conversations and no longer feel like we're on the peripheries and outsiders to the conversation, which is nice.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. And then just to kind of take it on, an episode we interviewed somebody from the first of two from across the pond. First one was with Dr. Emily Musil from the Milken Institute, which was a great conversation. Like it went in loads of different directions, and that reflected really on their report that they'd written about the AI literacy that's obviously come up again, about how AI literacy is important as reading literacy and numeracy and other bits that go in that space. But my favourite bit about what we talked about there, I think, is about lifelong learning and about education as a continuum. So the Milken Institute is obviously supporting that HE space, but the real big conversation is about how AI is disrupting that, but thinking about how we need to move beyond this idea of we go to kindergarten or a nursery, school, high school, university, and then my learning's finished. That macro credentialing and that moving into that space, that resonated a lot with me in that conversation with Emily.
Yeah, and linked back to the Iain MacRitchie stuff in regards to some great people that have made vast amounts of money and been successful in business that want to give their time, want to give their money, want to give their skill set to really invest back into education through philanthropy and entrepreneurship. And I think that's a really, really nice thing that the news every day seems to just be more and more chaotic and more about how the rich and powerful become are using that power not necessarily for good, but it's ultimately it was heartwarming to hear that actually there's so many different people. And again, it's another trend that we're seeing this year where, and I don't want to give too much away, but it's not just education that can fix education's problems. There is so much diversity in the community and in the world that can really feed in with a different skill sets. And education needs to open itself up to be receiving of those bits of the expertise from outside it. Often when you're in education, it's, well, you don't know because you've not been a teacher. Well, actually, maybe that's a really nice skill set of they can't walk a mile in your shoes because they've never been a teacher. They're not pretending to, but ultimately their skill set can really help and develop education as a whole. We need to stop being insular and holding in because there isn't enough of us anymore.
Yeah, and interestingly, that growth mindset that we are demanding of our young people to think differently, look at different perspectives. We're saying it to ourselves as well as educators and as education leaders in that space. And that is a brilliant segue into the conversation that we had with Dr. Robin Harwick, which was, it blew me away. Like the Pearl High School, which is a democratic school that's based on, like, she said things that, so if you've listened to that episode, she said things like, we give students choice in what they read and their involvement in stuff and how they respond. And we're going, wow. It's just, even that just blew us, didn't it?
Do you know what really struck me about Robin? And I think that in life in general is book by cover and how people perceive intelligence and we put it in and say that person is intelligent academically. But with people like Robin, really intelligent, super intelligent, but making a difference. And what a rebel. I can imagine she is an absolute
Yeah.
wildling at a party, but ultimately is a disruptor is opinionated, is curious, is empathetic, compassion, but he's refusing um, to just be told that one thing has to be, and that's what stood out, I think, from Robin of these rebellious, positive females and males, but from Robin's perspective, that really can change education when they stand by their values. And I think I got this from a different conversation off the podcast. Ultimately, there is certain stuff that we will do, but there's certain stuff that we refuse to do because it is outside of our values and beliefs as individuals, organisations. And I think Pearl is an example of that. There is certain stuff, curiosity, and certain spaces that they create for learners, but there are guardrails in there as well.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously she referred to Art Pearl's book, The Democratic Classroom, and thinking about how you can build democratic schools. And it is alien because we want compliance. And interestingly, that the title of that podcast was Why Schools Still Teach Compliance Instead of Democracy. Because what we really want is people to do what we say. And I think about this with my own kids. I think about it when I was teaching. Like, what's what we want? We want people to do what we say. And because that's easier, because you can scale that. So if you give people an opinion, an agency, and a little bit of like actually developing these British values that we were supposed to check in our letters, like if we did that, then perhaps we would have it would be a bit harder. In fact, it's not a bit harder; it's a lot harder. But kudos to what Robin's doing there going forward. And interestingly, our last podcast review in this segment was one that we did twice. The recording failed, but we managed to get back in. So we're very grateful that Danielle Finlay came to us. Danielle was for Progress Teaching. We actually found out, this is the bit that annoyed me the most, we found out that Danielle started teaching 10 years after we'd started teaching, and or started teacher training at least, and had already been a head teacher. He's now working as a progress teaching to help like develop like consultancy work around education. I thought to myself, my goodness me, I am old. That's not the only thing I took from it, but I did definitely realise that I was old. And Steve, you're even older than me.
I know, man. Yeah, I just look younger. You and Danielle, it's easier paper round. But no, I just think they're really, really good conversations. Clearly, massively passionate about pedagogy, but not just pedagogy in terms of the academic traditional sense. Ultimately, what does that look like, and how is it the guide and the leading element of so much different things? Talk about culture. Is Danielle is a young lady, or a lady, should I say, a lady that is a parent and had to make the decision between headship and parenthood, and not being able to give both. And ultimately, for so many talented females, there is a recruitment and a retention crisis in education across all of the different roles. And I think the thing that we have to tackle is that that so many females that are mums feel that they cannot be leaders in education and be mum. You can't dedicate. And the thing is, the people are refusing to give up and not do a good job at being a parent because they have to feel like they have to decide. Like, how is that a thing in any industry? And how have we created that? But yeah, I think it was really, really, it was just a really nice conversation, I think. And Danielle just knows her stuff and can apply it to industry. We talked about how is leadership in education different to leadership in business? How is so many different caveats and so many different little rabbit holes we went down. We went completely off script. We don't necessarily have a script, but we went off the guide, didn't we? We have so many questions, and we were like, yeah, it was a real good one.
Yeah, and obviously her real passion for pedagogy, she said to us beforehand, if you start talking about pedagogy, then you might need to shut me up. And we didn't want to, because I think that idea of the craft of teaching and how you develop the craft of teaching and what matters, I think was a great element. But interestingly, to bring it right back full circle to the conversation of the themes and the trends, this idea about less stuff, more space, using data only when we should use data rather than making it all about the data, that human connection came up, the conversation about community and how it takes a village to raise a child. There are threads, and our trends booklet that we'll be pulling together, the trends are pretty much trending, as opposed to us trying to look for a trend, you know what I mean? So I think there were 7 really good conversations, and much better than the conversation that we've had today. But I think it's good to do the reflection and to sit in that space and to think. And we've got some excellent ones coming up, including some big names, some smaller names, some development of the community stuff. And in fact, if you want to nominate or suggest a guest, or you know somebody that you think would be a really good person to be on the podcast, please do get in touch. There's links in the show notes. Please get in touch if you think that would be useful. And if you are coming to one of our in-person events or one of our webinars, get involved. We're looking forward to seeing you. get to Uprising. If you are listening to this before the 25th of June, we've probably still got a few tickets left, and we'd love you to be with us in Liverpool. It's been good. It's a nice reflection, man. It's always good just to sit back and think about what we've taken from it. So thanks for it.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, you too, mate.